authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Media. We've changed it. It's media now, folks. I also realized something at the very beginning of my opening music for the first time in 5 years. I've just realized this. It says T minus 30 seconds and counting, and then it goes on for 45 seconds. So I guess that's new math. I don't know. I'm going to save all of my ancillary musings and ramblings for show opening so we can bring Kai in here. I'm super excited about having Kai on. Uh, she has a powerful story to tell, and if you pay any attention to her on social media, you know that she has been run through the ringer and that she fights, but she's not just fighting for herself, she's fighting for people she loves and cares about. So we're going to get ready to bring her in. Make sure you're checking out the description of the video, and so you can find her links, that you can follow her story. And as she begins to talk, you will see that this is absolutely in keeping with the theme of the show. So pay very close attention, because some of what Kai's going to be talking about is going to relate to the Justice for Pam story that we've been telling. Not directly, but you will hear tones of that. So remind me, folks. Not that you can, because this is Monday Night Musings and it's being pre-recorded. So don't remind me. But gosh, season 4, episode 8, by the way. So anyway, remind me that I'll do all the announcements afterwards. So without any further ado, Kai, thanks for making time to do an episode of TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, so that my audience can learn your story and what you got going on. So first, before we delve into what's happened to you, tell us a little bit about who you are, and ease yourself into the story, because I know you have hours worth of data if you wanted it.
Yeah.
So
Yes. Well, thank you, first of all, so much for even considering to have me. I feel really honored that the story is getting to people. I think that's so important, that people hear the story through platforms like yours. So just feel really honored to be here. Thank you so much. I've been really busy, since all of this, and since the most recent reason I believe a lot of people have found me is because I spent 2 weeks in jail. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but ended up getting out on a habeas, what's called a writ of habeas corpus. So that became pretty popular, and ever since then, it's just it's my purpose has really shown itself. It was not in vain. And I've been kind of full throttle on the mission and the purpose, much like yourself, to bring to light what is really happening for me, specifically within family court, right? But we know that it's not just family court,
right.
But really hitting the nail on the head with that, and with what is happening in family court by using children, using children as the weapon to hurt somebody.
Well, let's actually touch on that then, because you are, I mean, you're not childless, but your children have been taken from you. And
Yes.
when did this start, and why? What's the background on that? Because I think that's the part that's really gonna resonate with my audience, is like, it's one thing to hear about the injustice of being in jail for 2 weeks. It's another thing to hear that this all started a while ago. It wasn't like they just showed up at your house 3 weeks
Right.
ago and said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to jail."
Right.
There's so much more to it than just the abuse that's still happening. But how did you get involved in the system?
Yeah. So I grew up in a broken home, and I never wanted my children to go through that, so I was very careful for a long time. I ended up meeting my daughter's father. So I do have my son. He's older. That's a story for another day. He's already out of the house. He's in college. So my daughter, who's now 5, I ended up meeting my daughter's father I was living in Hawaii at the time, and it was a very tumultuous relationship, I would say, you know, very up and down, very toxic. Probably had a lot to work on myself, and I think was also a strong person in that I had been single for a very long time and had been working on myself, you know, so attracted a person who kind of feeds off of that powerful energy, but also maybe somebody who kind of is a people pleaser and likes to see the potential in other people and really hope that they'll be that. So he ended up moving to Nevada after we kind of had been on and off, and ended up telling me that I was the love of his life, you know, the whole love bombing thing. I don't know if
I
anyone
was
is.
just gonna say it. Just the way you're describing him without using the words, he sounds like the clinical definition of a narcissist. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
you know,
yes.
yeah.
We shouldn't laugh, but there's not a lot you could do. You
I
almost
mean,
have to.
well, I just made a post about this, honestly, and to go off, to go off on a little side tangent here, but my therapist, who I've been working with since all of this started, I mean, even when we were separating, I had told her, and that was the first thing she said before any of this crazy family court stuff happened. Like, we were actually still living in the same house, and I was talking with her about what was going on, and she's like, man, do you see that this person sounds like what we call a narcissist? And I kind of knew about a narcissist, but when you're in this, you're kind of forced to become an expert in that field. But as I was working with her through all of this and letting her see the communication, telling her what was going on, her seeing what was going on, she's like checking boxes on the DSM-5 in like these cluster B, personality disorder checklists. And she's like, all over the board, right? And she's like, man, sounds like a personality disorder NOS. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, not otherwise specified. He's got boxes checked in this field, in this field, in this field, in this field. It's like there's so many that it's like you can't specify what it is, but at the same time, it's in the DSM-5 and can be labeled as something because these people have a very clear pattern of how they act, right? That's why.
So he's hitting all of these check marks before you even know what's going on,
right.
Love bombing you, and so do you guys end up getting married then after he moves to Nevada?
We actually did not get married. He moved to Nevada, told me I was the love of his life. Like, I can't live without you. I messed up. I want to do all the work. Like, I need you to come here. I need you here. I can't wait. You have to just come here now. Like, we can't do this long distance thing. So, my silly self, I'm like, he's telling me everything I want to hear, So I packed up half my stuff and one of my dogs, and I moved to Nevada. And I was there for 3 weeks, and it was just insane. It was insanity, even in that 3 weeks of like a slight move. There ended up being a physical situation that was very traumatizing for me. And at that moment, I actually fled back to Hawaii. At 1 o'clock in the morning, left with my dog and just some clothes, went to my friend's and stayed with her for 5 days until I could get a flight back to Hawaii. Essentially, that would be the end of our relationship. And it was just extremely traumatizing. And
this all took place from moving to Nevada to move in with him was 3 weeks in the shift from
in 3 weeks. I mean, everything was lip service. I don't even think there was a shift. I think it was like lip service, get her here, cool, she's here, same story, different day, SSDD, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And we had gone on a trip to New Orleans. Just the way he treated me was just the same. It was all the same. It was just horrible. He would just belittle me. He would, put me down, very slight nuances of his behavior. And it just made me feel really bad. And I realized, like, I just don't feel good. And then the physical altercation that happened was ultimately the telltale sign of like, okay, this person could kill me. And I I'm pretty tough in that situation where I was like, I'm not staying in this. So I left. I did leave. When I finally got back to Hawaii, I still had like all of my, health care and everything. So I actually ended up going to the doctor that I had there in Hawaii and told her the story. And I said, this was so traumatizing for me. Like this quick shift of, I thought I was going to be spending the rest of my life with this person that I love, and who said loved me, and I was the love of his life, whatever. And now this has happened. Like this person, I actually saw the life being taken out of me in a matter of 30 seconds in this person's hands. I need to go on antidepressants, and I'm like a very holistic person. I don't do things like that. So for me to say I need antidepressants to get through this and to help me cope and to numb me for right now, like that's a huge thing,
Well, you've been through trauma. Trauma
Yeah,
is trauma. Yeah,
right. I
you
mean, and
were
I've been through
self-aware
trauma
enough to
in my life,
recognize that.
right? So they run their normal test, their standard test, right? They're like, she said, "Oh, is there any chance you could be pregnant?" And I'm like, "No, I just got a new IUD. All is good. No, nothing to worry about there." So I
Surprise.
left. She calls me back the next day, and she was like, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually just in the car right now. I just pulled up to a house I'm about to walk into." And she's like, "Okay, well, do you want to talk? You want to call me back?" I was like, "No, it's fine. What's up?" And she's like, "Well, those antidepressants that we talked about putting you on are not going to happen right now." She was like, "You're pregnant." And I was like, "Oh." Yeah. So that happened. So I waited a couple of weeks. I told my sister and I told some close friends and kind of worked through it. And then I decided to tell him.
Um,
And
how did he take that?
um a lot of it was over text, some of it, like a little bit of it was over the phone. But he did say like, "I'm in shock." Um and then the questions like, "Well, I thought you had an IUD," and all that sort of stuff. And it was just kind of, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to raise a child alone. I don't want this baby to grow up without a father, because all of the stuff from my childhood came up, because I grew up in a broken home. I grew up where my mom and my dad were fighting through the family court a lot. I was, and I'm going to say it, alienated. A lot of people get really upset about that word lately, but that is what happened to me. I was alienated by my stepmom, actually, and triangulated by my stepmom mostly. Once my brothers got a little bit older, my adopted brothers, to try to keep me from my father. And then my stepmother would also talk really bad about my mom. And so they would then kind of, in this weird way, alienate me from my mother, even though I was living primarily with her, and then also try to alienate me from my father and gang up on me. He would go to work. They would make up stories. So for me, I was not as close to my father as I wanted to be. And I always had this like, man, I just wish my father was more in my life and loved me the way that he seems to love these adopted boys and this new wife that he has,
So he adopted his new wife's sons.
Actually, so my stepmom and him adopted two boys together.
Ah, okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
And
And
so
so she was working behind, well, not even behind the scenes. She was just working overtime to make those boys the priority over
yeah.
actual flesh and blood
So
Kai.
this is actually an interesting conversation too, and maybe more for another day. But my mom was 41 when she had me. She was 10 years older than my father, and my dad was the one who wanted kids. So she ended up getting pregnant with me. Well, my dad ended up having an affair with my stepmom on my mom while she was pregnant with me. They separated they got divorced when I was 6 months old. And then he married my stepmom when I was just a year old. And for the next 3 years, now that I'm older and I have not a degree, a certificate in child psychology, I know what happened to me. I recognize it. She got me to call her mom. My stepmom got me to call her mom, right? And I think about that now as a mother and just how absolutely manipulative that is.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, my stepmother is probably the worst narcissist of all of them.
But this is but this is really key, because people who have been exposed to narcissists at a young age will continue to find themselves seemingly inexplicably drawn to other narcissists. So here you are now as an adult saying to yourself, I don't want to have children in a broken home, in a broken family, in a divided
Right.
household. Now in a position where you're in a relationship with somebody who, let's just, for lack of better terminology, is a narcissist of some
Yeah.
otherwise not specified. And now reacting to two types of trauma: the trauma of being raised by a narcissist in a broken home, to being willing to succumb to a narcissist so you don't have a child in a broken home.
Right.
So you have these two types of trauma at war. So I mean, pretty hard to not reach the conclusion. Apparently you get back together with him after all of this
Yeah,
because of that.
exactly.
How soon did that happen? How soon did you get back into a relationship with him?
So when I moved to Nevada, I had 3 dogs at the time. I had left 2 of them still in Hawaii at a friend's, and I took my pit bull, and she's a service dog. So I took her when I went back to Hawaii. I took her back, and she was stuck in quarantine because she had been on the island for so long that I never got her shots or anything like that. And they would not let her out. And it was costing me $1,000 a week in this quarantine. She had been in there for 3 weeks at that point. So by the time I went back to Nevada, I believe it had been a month at that point. So because we talked about my dog and I said, I need to get her out. So if anything, I'll just take her out, bring her back. I was actually planning on going back to Nevada and staying with a friend. And he was like, no, that's stupid. You just come stay with me. Like, we'll go to therapy. We'll go to counseling if everything's fine with the baby. Okay. Yeah. So I did end up going back there. I took the dog back, and then I was still kind of seeing a doctor in Hawaii. I hadn't transferred anything yet. So I did go back to the island, stayed with friends on the island, went to the doctor, and would kind of go back and forth for a little bit, and ended up staying with him. But then in September of that year, he actually went on what's called a temporary duty station deployment, which I'm sure you're familiar with, a TDY.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was gone for an entire month, and I was now home by myself in this new apartment, with nobody, like pregnant, and just everything was fine. Our communication was mostly just through messages. He didn't like to communicate over the phone very much. And so everything seemed really fine. Everything, he seemed really happy. He seemed really excited about having this baby. And he was like, I'm never going to do anything to destroy this. Over text. It was just, again, it was like kind of that theatrical love bombing. And then fast forward to him getting home and me getting text messages we had shared a phone plan at that point, and me getting text messages from another woman with like her sending him photos, and it was through our shared app. So it came through, like, we had each other's numbers on our phones, right? And we did that because part of that, our communication was like, I needed to be able to trust him, because all of this had happened before. Every time he would go away, he would meet up with people in those locations. Like, that had been a lot of the toxic breakdown throughout our history. And so I just couldn't trust. And so he agreed to be able to do that, And so that he came home, and I'm pregnant, and I'm finding out that he's doing the exact same thing. And that was in December. And that really just began.
What year was that?
2019.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that really just began the real downward spiral of the rest of our relationship while I was pregnant. We went to a Christmas holiday party, and he was drinking. I was pregnant, all his friends. And we were playing this game, and literally every question he would ask or whatever, or be asked, it would be an attack towards me. And, just saying things like, it was like truth or dare, tell the truth. Oh, I really hate when people are just so opinionated and like would then kind of stare at me. And he's like drunk, saying all of these things. Every answer is about something to just do with me. And I'm sitting
were
here.
Were others picking up on it, or was it?
Oh, yeah. The girl sitting next to me that had been his friend for a very long time actually put her hand on my leg and was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And we ended up getting in an argument that night. We were in the state of Washington. We had flown there to see his family. All of his friends saw it. There are some of his friends don't even drink. And I'm sure, but they're the flying monkeys. They'll defend him till his death. I mean, they'll never go against him because they've been friends since he was a kid.
For those that don't, I'm versed in all of this language. I'm very good friends with a guy named Josh Slocum. He hosts a show called Disaffected, and Disaffected is it's the root of the show is about cluster B personality disorders.
Okay.
And so when people throw out terminology like flying monkeys, you and I hear that, we know exactly what you're talking about, but other people are going, what's a flying monkey? Wicked Witch of the West, folks. Narcissists are the Wicked Witch, and the flying monkeys are the friends and family members of the narc that take up the cause for the Wicked Witch, and then take the victim and attack the victim, which then ultimately leads to Darvo, and which we could. I wish we had 2 hours, but because we could.
And you know what? I probably could. I totally could. I have to connect. Come back and talk just about that. We can try to stay on track.
Yeah, no, that's why. If anybody, we've committed to a certain amount of time, so I have to work to keep us both on track. So
right, I know.
So yeah. Kai, all of this is going on. You eventually make the decision like this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
So was that after it's your daughter, right?
My daughter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was this after your daughter was born or before your daughter was born, where you said, I got to cut and run?
Yeah. So COVID happened right when she was born, right? Like literally I was doing a home birth, had an emergency kind of situation, ended up having to go to the hospital, and I had to choose between between my midwife or my ex, who had not even supported me through my pregnancy. And in my head, I'm going like, oh crap, like, how is this going to play out if I don't make the right decision right now in the future? Like, is my daughter going to hate me because I didn't let her father be in the hospital room when she's being born?
There's your trauma.
Yeah. So just constantly thinking about the future of how things are going to play out. So I'm like, all right, so she's born. He doesn't have to go to work for a very long time. He gets to sit at home, be on the video games for 20 hours a day, and eat himself to death while getting paid to do it. And I'm now here taking care of this brand new baby, getting no sleep, also working a job, also cleaning the house and doing everything. And he's just enjoying his life. And so 2 years of this go on, plus lots and lots of other issues, including, very violent things that would happen in front of my daughter, that finally the straw that broke the camel's back was like when there was an episode that happened that should not have happened, that was like this close to, if that had hit my daughter, she would be dead. And he had lied to me about where he was going to get moved when I said I wouldn't go to Germany and I wouldn't marry him. So I find out that he's getting transferred to Texas. And so I'm like, okay, well, there could be worse places, I guess. So we're kind of trying to work things out inside.
For all my Texas friends, we understand it's not Texas' fault.
Yeah. Actually, where I am now, I love it. But so I wanted what was best for my daughter at that time. And I believed that was to still, despite everything, I was like, okay, he can go to some classes, he can learn how to be a better parent, but it's so important. And I'm thinking, me, my own trauma, my own childhood. I'm like, it's so important for her to have her father in her life. So we didn't work out. I end up buying a house in Texas, and he goes behind my back and he buys a house, and we sit down one day and I'm like, just trying to have this really adult, amicable conversation. And I'm like, obviously I can't give you the love that you want. You can't give me the love that I want. Like, we need to go our separate ways.
Still blaming yourself. You're still blaming yourself here, by the way. That's what you're doing in that situation. You're taking responsibility for his shitty behavior on yourself, and trying to assuage him so that as you break up with him, he recognizes it's all your fault and will let you go. No offense, but I mean, that's, you hear it, right? You hear it, right? That's so you're dumping him is what you're doing.
Yeah, I was dumping him. Exactly.
And rightly so. Though I'm not judging you for that. I think you're a saint for putting up with it for as long as you did, but you're also nuts, my friend. You're nuts. Like, so you're dumping him. This would have been what, 2022 then?
Yep. March of 2022. Eden had just turned 2, and it was her birthday, and I wanted to kind of wait till after that. So we sat down and had this conversation, and I was like, hey, like, how can we make this work? You've got the house selling, and we can make this work. Maybe if we buy some land together, like 10 acres, there's a house over here, there's a house over here. Eden will have, in my head, it's just like this fairy tale idea of what co-parenting should look like, as opposed to what I went through.
What it actually is. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was like, oh, well, Eden can just literally do through the little forest to mom's house, right? And through the little forest to dad's house at any time she wants. She just gets to go back and forth. Mommy lives over here. Daddy lives over here. Happy family, even though mom and dad aren't together, right? That's what mature people would do. No. So the demon entered him at that moment of Kai breaking up with him. And it was full on hell from there. He served me with papers the next day.
Just so people understand, when you say served, you're not talking divorce papers, because you had made the decision to not marry him based on the things that were happening. So you're talking custodial papers.
Correct. So mind you, we already both had closed on our homes in Texas. He had this back burner plan that if I did not do exactly what he wanted, this is what he was going to do. He was going to initiate his backup plan B. And he's in the Air Force, right? He's a JTAC. So his whole life since he's been in has been about tactical manipulation, covert control. He's very good at that. And he's a quiet guy, right? The covert guy. So
he's a quiet narcissist is what he is.
It's a covert narcissist, and it's very dangerous. They are very dangerous, because to everybody else, they look like such a well put together person. Oh, he's so nice. He'll do everything for everybody else. But when you get inside the house behind the closed doors and things happen, then nobody out there is going to believe you, because he's such a nice guy, and he goes around doing all, flaunting what a perfect
paragon of virtue in the community, like kind to everyone, very involved in whatever charitable activities or whatever it might be, good reputation. Yeah. Oh, I'm well
And
aware. Trust me.
interestingly enough, him being in the military, and then when we move into the idea of what family court and these institutions, these indoctrinated institutions are about manipulation, control, order, do what I say, not what I do, like commander, dictator, it very much is in line for him to utilize
He
that
knows how to use that
institution.
system.
Right. The narcissism overhead shell of family court or of these government control. And it's so ironic to me. It's such a paradox that, like, you have this person who is fighting or supposed to be protecting our freedoms, who is so hell-bent on controlling other people, and it's beyond me. But at
Well,
that moment,
and the system caters to them.
they do. And it's a do what I say, not what I do, right? I don't, you can cut this part out. I don't know if you're allowed to say it, but to me, it's like they look to it as like it's like Hitler saying, go do this. And they're the little Nazis or the minions that will just do whatever they need to do without thought, right? Not actually thinking about the repercussions, but that's what it feels like to me. And the aspect of it was that now that I was leaving him, he was not going to have control. And so the only way, to control me was to use our daughter to
Against
do
you. Yep.
that. And
So did he file for full custodial
he did.
parenting?
So this is
Wow.
what blew my mind. On the papers, he asked, even though we were both moving to Texas, I did not have orders to move to Texas. He had orders to move to Texas. I did not have to pick up my life again and go to Texas, but I chose to buy a house sight unseen. Quite literally, I only saw videos from my realtor, bought the house sight unseen, and moved 5 minutes from where he was to be working so that we could co-parent. He files these papers in Nevada. And
which ties you down to Nevada.
Say that again?
That kind of ties you down to Nevada.
No, it was it was because we were still there. It was him trying to get control before we even moved.
Yeah.
And so he asks the Nevada court for the right to move to Texas with our daughter, to take her from me. Does not even mention in the papers that, oh, by the way, yeah, she bought a house there too. And actually, we're both supposed to be moving there in less than 30 days. And all of a sudden, he's throwing all of the stuff in this plan to try to persuade the court that I am like some horrible mother.
I was just going to say he had to have been making accusations in the documentation.
The main thing for him that he started to use, of course, was like, because I'm very much an awake person. I've always been, ever since I read Behold a Pale Horse by Bill Cooper, good old man buddy there. And his saying is like, read everything and listen to everyone, but believe nothing unless you can prove it within your own right. And I pray to God every day for discernment and asking for all of that. And I knew what was happening during the whole COVID thing. I had read.
So now he's using that against you.
And I never vaccinated my daughter because I'm holistic. I'm completely against that. And not because I am anti-vaccine. It's because I am informed and I study and,
And you're
I'm
her parent, and that's your right.
Right. And my daughter was never sick a day in her life. She was as healthy as could be. He knew it. He knew what a great mother I was, but this was his way to take her from me. So fast forward.
And he gets to paint you out as some sort of crackpot.
Yeah.
And totally. the courts are literally going to side with anybody who's not a crackpot, and they get to be the final arbiters of what right. The definition of crackpot is. And sadly for you, you're a crackpot because you didn't do all the stuff that the rest of people in society do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is the very definition, folks, of oppression.
Yeah, that's right. I was just going to say that's literally oppression and government overreach. And what we're talking about here ultimately is
so that. Did he get a decision from the Nevada family courts right away?
Oh no. So she actually, she gave us like temporary orders. She saw that we were moving to Texas. Honestly, that judge should have said, hey, like, you guys are moving. I'll give you these temporary orders and then you take them to Texas and you can get final orders in Texas based off of Texas, protocol. But fast forward, we did have a trial set. I, at the time, had an attorney. I was working. I mean, he was just making my life hell, absolutely making my life hell. And I asked him to settle for 50-50 custody, like 50-50, you know what I mean? Very
You weren't asking
minimal,
for
like,
you weren't
say that
asking for an exorbitant amount of child support where he
no,
was taking care of you and her and
no. I said, while I get on my feet, if you're making more money than me, let's do what Nevada does, which is they kind of look at who makes more money and use the rest of that into however they compute it. And then that's how much child support. So if I was actually making more money than him and we had 50-50, I would be paying child support to support the child, and so that was fine. I mean, he was paying like $500 a month, and that didn't even cover, food and the activities that I had her in. So ultimately, I'm still definitely supporting my daughter. So I offer 50-50, and he's one of those people in the family court realm who has had this person in his ear, which is a lawyer, saying, oh, do this, oh, do that. Oh, this is how you're going to win. This is how you're going to take the child from her. So he's throwing all this stuff at the wall, filing emergency motion here, emergency motion there. One day, my daughter she's a little bit over 2 years old, 2.5. She doesn't want to go with him. She's just like in a mommy mode, maybe coming down with something, not feeling good, whatever. And she doesn't want to go with him. So she's crying, upset. And he turns around and files an emergency motion claiming that I was physically abusing my daughter to get her to act like that. Gets us a hearing out of Nevada that cost me $8,000. And the judge was like, wait, spanking? She's like, you already told me that your ex doesn't spank, that she doesn't use corporal punishment, and that was part of the breakdown of y'all's relationship. And now you're telling me that she's spanking her daughter to get her to act a certain way towards you. And, so the judge wasn't buying it.
But that's still $8,000 out of your pocket now that
Right.
you had to spend to fight false allegations.
Right.
So,
right.
and Kai, I know we could, I want to, he continues to ramp up the pressure on you.
Yep.
Making accusation after accusation after accusation, but he finally is able to convince the courts to take your daughter from you.
Yeah. So
when did that happen? And what was
I'll just move it into this. So we actually ended up going to trial in Nevada because he did not want to settle for 50-50. He thought he was going to be able to take my daughter from me at that moment. We went to trial. The judge gives us 50-50 custody. She orders him to pay child support. And we come back now, 6-month mark hits in Texas, which is when you can essentially establish jurisdiction. So he files for a modification in Texas.
In Texas.
And starts the whole process all over again, saying, my daughter is not safe with her. She's not stable. She's mentally not stable. Just all the allegations all over again. Okay. He files for these enforcements saying that I did this, I did that. I didn't follow the order here. I didn't follow the order there. Just a whole bunch of, what, thrown at the wall, seeing what is going to stick. And this goes on for over a year, before we even really see a judge. And then he is literally making my life hell. I'm so sick of it. I'm so stressed out all the time. I cannot be fully present for my daughter because I'm just losing money, $400,000, end up having to sell my house to pay legal fees. So, just horrible situation. And I end up having somebody who's outside of the system, who's been through this for a long time. She kind of guided me into a solution. And that solution was to write a writ and ask for the court to do a certain thing, which looks much like what's called a temporary restraining order, except it's just a little bit unorthodox language in relationship to the court, right? So it's a writ of divinia asking for the court to step in and stop this legal and litigation abuse. And
he was using paper terrorism against you is what he was doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just chaos. And so he then turned around and he took that writ and the bond that this person had put on the case, and you turned around and actually did his own TRO that was within the limits and realm of family court code, and protocol and civil procedure, and said, look at what she did. She wrote this document and obviously she's just crazy, right? So she's clearly not safe for my daughter. And the judge ends up granting it. And so for 2 weeks, I had no contact with my daughter. We end up going to court. I took some of the advice from this person who started coaching me into how to respond within the court and within, their jurisdiction or not giving them jurisdiction. A lot of the language around, being a sovereign person or a private American, an American national, that sort of language. And
which, of course, raises red flags with everybody, because the first thing they think of is soft sit and you're dangerous and you're one of those people that thinks it's, you should be able to walk down or drive down the road with a tank.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm not opposed, but,
well, my whole thing is we are all sovereign. We all should be able to live autonomously. We should. We really should not have this government overreach. And I think if everybody knew about it, which is the mission that I'm on right now through Children's Court, is to kind of give people this awakening of like, family court is not what you think. These government entities do not do what you think. They are not here to protect you. They are here to make money. And
that shows with, just one hearing, you cost $8,000.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, family court is a $60 billion industry.
Yeah. People do not understand that. I want you to understand what I'm saying here. Take all of the private citizen sovereign stuff, take all of it out of that. Take all of that away. Just for the sake of argument, for anybody who's hearing this going, oh, yep, now I can see why he tried that.
Yep.
Take all of that away. Folks, if you go to court, if somebody sues you or somebody takes you to family court, you have to pay for the privilege of going to court. That is, you're paying to go to court. If you can't afford to pay to go to court, you lose. You lose because you can't go to court unless you are willing to pay. Even if it's on the back end, you have to be willing to go into debt to have a dispute resolved. And the way the state operates, you can't resolve a dispute unless you go and get permission from the state to resolve your dispute. So you have to go into debt. You could take away all the other stuff. You could think that Kai is nuts. You could think that I'm crazy. You could think that any number of other people. My friend Chad Cater, he's going to love this. He will. I guarantee you, he's going to want to talk to you. Okay. He will say these same things. You could take all of that away. All the stuff that you've been told is just paranoid, schizophrenic, delusional conversation. Take all of that away. Here in the Republic of the United States, all of the family courts do not operate in any other way than as a profit-making scheme.
That's right.
that you have to pay to go through to be able to keep your child.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he ends up winning, taking your daughter from you. You're still in this fight, and you just got out of jail a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
All because of all of this. What was their excuse for throwing you in jail, Kai? We're going to have you back on to go into even more detail. but
Sure.
this is an
We'll
introduction,
dive
I guess.
into the corruption aspect. You know, there's their story, and then there's what really happened, right? They're going to tell you why they did it. Oh, she violated an order that is not even lawful in the first place. It's what's called void ab initio. When a judge violates your constitutional rights without clear and convincing evidence or compelling state interest, time and time again, the Supreme Court has ruled and has set precedent that those orders are void and that those people making orders lose their jurisdiction. So any orders coming after that are like nullities, excuse me. So what I did put on the record that I found out a lot of, and I have decided not to be quiet about, is what they're mad about. I put on the record the attorney being the highest contributor to the judge's campaign, her 30-year working relationship, being best friend.
Which attorney, by the way?
Do you want the name?
I don't care. Yeah,
so my ex's attorney, Stephen Walden, him and the judge had a 30-year working relationship. You know, after all of this, they put me
donated to his campaign.
He donated to her campaign.
Or excuse me, he donated to her campaign.
But he was the highest contributor of her campaign career. Okay, and of course, that's in essence, that's against the judicial canons, because Canon 2 says that even the appearance of impropriety is
impropriety. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
the
no
appearance of
person. And I just spoke at the Capitol on a bill that we're trying to pass to have more transparency with that it is literally, I say, no reasonable person would sit in a room if you were to say, oh, yes, that attorney donated thousands of dollars to that judge, and this attorney didn't pay anything to her, and think for 1 second that judge is going to rule in favor of the person who didn't pay her. Okay.
Yeah. There is no such thing as judicial neutrality, by the way, folks. There is because let's be honest, Kai, if you were donating to a judge, you'd kind of expect them to look at you and go, well, you're a good person. Like, it's a human reaction. Like, I don't even, it's crooked and slimy and as to use the phrase shystery as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
But it's just human. Of course you're going to look at the person who's been donating thousands and thousands of dollars to you and go, I don't rule in this guy's favor. All of that goes right out the window, and I may not get elected again. So, so you put that on the record?
Okay, so I put that on the record. I also put on the record how opposing counsel always is the one to motion for this specific guardian ad litem that came onto my case.
A very specific guardian ad litem by name?
Nita Libersky.
So this Anita?
Nita, just Nita.
So Nita, every single time your opposing counsel was asking for this one particular person by name.
Yes.
Every time.
And every time that there was a need for a guardian ad litem in a certain case, he would ask for her.
And what people have to understand here is guardian ad litems are not free, folks.
Nope.
The disputing parties have to pay for that.
That's right. Now, this guardian ad litem has also been very good friends with the judge for a very long time.
No.
Oh, yes.
The hell you say?
Trust me, the Bell County is, I mean, we've dug it all up. We know everything at this point. So I mean, I'm going to say it, like, we know everything. If you're watching this and you're in Bell County and you're one of them, we know everything. So you should be scared. I wouldn't even care if I went to jail again at this point, because I've got so many people that are watching what's going on. Like, it would just be an uproar. I mean, you would be stupid to throw me in jail for something that wasn't an actual serious crime for me to commit. You know what I mean? Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, they go ahead. No, don't. I don't want them to do it. But like, all right, I'm like, okay, Bell County.
Right.
If you go after her, now I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
And we'll get other people to pay attention as well.
So right before that trial, which, by the way, here's another key factor. My attorney, who I had already paid $30,000 to within a matter of like 4 weeks, asked for another $15,000 to go to trial. And since I wouldn't give it to him because he didn't do what he needed to do, he withdrew that morning of trial. And the judge refused to continue the hearing. So I had to represent myself. But lo and behold, I had actually gone to the clerk because I was kind of prepared that something could happen. And I like to prepare from all sides. Like, okay, I'm not going to be completely caught off guard if for some reason she doesn't continue this, right? I'm going to be as prepared as I can without an attorney. So I actually went to the clerk and I got certified copies of the motions from opposing counsel asking for the guardian ad litem. I also got certified copies of that guardian ad litem's recommendation in every single case. And do you want to guess? I mean, I don't know if there's a prize here, but do you want to guess who she always makes recommendations in favor of in those cases?
Always you. Always you. Oh, she always errs on your side or the side of no.
No, she's on the side of the person that hires her, right? She always makes the recommendation in favor of opposing counsel's client because that's who hires her. So that was interesting. So I put her on the stand and I was.
So let me, so just so people understand, opposing counsel, top donator to the judge. Opposing counsel always asks for this one particular guardian ad litem, who always gets paid. Guardian ad litem always decides in favor of, what's this opposing counsel's name one more time?
Stephen Walden.
Always. Not ever been one case where Walden is the opposing counsel where the guardian ad litem ever sided against him. Ever. Not
Correct.
once.
Correct. And I've got all the documents to prove this. This is not me just saying things. I could lay it out there for anyone to see. No problem.
So lo and behold, you bring all of this into the court. You present it to the court. And by the way, I still want people to understand this is family court. This is not criminal court, folks. This is not criminal court. No one here should even be expecting to go to jail from family court. There should be the specter of imprisonment and loss of freedom should not be hanging over your head. It's bad enough to be risking losing custody of your child. The last thing, I can guarantee you, the last thing on Kai's mind and anybody else's mind in this situation is, I'm going to jail today. I guarantee it. There was not on your mind, was it? There was no chance that you thought that you would be going to jail over family court.
Well, and the funny thing about that you mentioned it really quick too, is my ex actually did multiple things to press charges on me for, and his family too, his mom and his dad, the Flying Monkeys, who, by the way, moved in with him, sold their house of 40 years and moved in with him into their house, left behind their other kids and grandchildren to come help him basically take my daughter from me. They all live in this nice, big, happy family now. But, his mother had pressed charges on me for harassment when I would call and ask to talk to my daughter, and used my First Amendment right to free speech, telling her that there is a special place in hell for people who do this to good mothers. I am not a drug addict. I am not an alcoholic. I do not abuse my daughter or neglect her or any of that, right? The only issue that we've had in this conversation is about, me presenting as this sovereign person. Okay. So, and to tap on that too, I mean, people who aren't me, who don't have my story, who also are not drug addicts or alcoholics, are still losing their kids. Okay.
That's why I said remove that entire part of the conversation away.
Yeah.
Not because I think you're a crackpot, but you just take that, you take that part out of it. It removes the argument that so many people are going to have when they hear this. Oh, there she is. She's one of those. She's one of them. No, take all of that away. People who don't make the same exact arguments that you're making also get abused by the system. So it can't be that Kai's the crackpot. There's something wrong with the system.
You'll notice this, right? Three kind of key points here is, number one, when anybody goes into family court, what is the first thing that it says across the top of the paper when you're served with that paper? It says, you are being sued. right? So automatically it's like, okay, I'm being sued for my child. So are you telling me that my child is property? But then if
Yep.
you go in there and you try to say, excuse me, you're violating my constitutional rights by trying to take my property without just cause, they're like, oh, so you consider your child property? It's like, well, no, I'm actually just playing your game. I'm using the rules and the
The
definitions
language,
the language that you
the
apply.
very damn language that you'd make me use, and then you hold it against me.
So
So
that's again this energy of narcissism, of the Darvo, right? They reverse things around and they make it like you're the one doing it. And really this whole institution is like the biggest narcissistic monster, abuser monster.
and just so people know, Darvo is deny, accuse, reverse, victim, and offender.
So deny, attack,
attack.
reverse, victim, and then offender. So they
Yeah.
play the victim and then they're like, you're actually the person that's
Yeah.
doing this. Yeah.
So-
More narcissistic language. So the other thing that people need to recognize on those three scales is that they then go on this phishing scheme, right? And they say that they need all of your credit card statements and all of your bank statements because they really just need to see who can support the child the most. Oh, no. That is not what this is about. That is, ooh, let me see who has the most money that I could just, all these credit cards, all this, can just take it right out of their bank account and I can just keep this going. And who is going to fight harder than a parent that loves their children? Right. What better weapon than a child to take money from people, right? We know that.
Oh, for sure.
And then the third aspect is that you're not going to have people who don't have money in family court. Okay. Right. But there are other institutions such as CPS, DFPS, whatever, that are finding a way to come after the people who don't have money and who don't end up in family court to take children for profit. And that's absolutely happening. Absolutely. That is happening. So it's kind of a disgusting double-edged sword of profit. And
why did the judge throw you in jail?
So my ex did this enforcement. She was very mad that I put on the record, that they had this relationship, that it was so obvious. She also, I had served her on the record 3 times with notices of her violations of my constitutional rights, of the family code, of the public policy. And then on the second one, I even included at that point penal codes that they had now violated that were criminal. Okay. And then on the third one, I noticed her of her duty to vacate, void, or to announce that orders like that are void and to declare them that. Even though you don't have to, I let her know this is your duty, that I am now here by special appearance. I am not being heard under your jurisdiction because you have lost jurisdiction, because you have violated my constitutional rights. You have forced me to pay to see my daughter without any evidence to that, to why. I have done 2 psychological evaluations and the doctor
that you have to pay for,
that I had to pay $7,000 for, and then had to have the psychiatrist testify, who testified and said that a mother like Kai having her child taken away from her is as traumatic of an experience as someone who goes to war and has bombs and planes and guns going off around them. Who testified to that?
And found, just so people understand, found that the only psychological trauma in all of this that you did display was a direct result of how you were being treated by the system, and that you had no other underlying psychological issues that should be concerned for.
That was on the record. He said that I had anxiety, depression, and PTSD directly related to the ongoing litigation in the case. And that was what he said. And my ex never had to take a psychological evaluation, even though I said, hey, if you're going to make me take one, and he's sitting over here saying that I'm not crazy, I'm mentally unstable, and I'm sitting over here saying anybody that can do this to somebody clearly has a mental disability, right? Anyone who can treat another human being and a child like this needs to go through a psychological evaluation.
But it
yet
was the
you have not
judge
forced
that
him to do
the
that
judge
at all.
ordered you to do it, no, and not
Oh,
him.
the judge ordered me to do it. I did one that they decided wasn't good enough for them, right? They wanted a second opinion because it didn't say what they wanted it to say. So we got the second opinion, and it still said
The same thing.
the same
Yeah.
thing. And then he tried to say, you know, we still believe that she has an undiagnosed mental disability. Like, so just going on. And they've used that to justify keeping my daughter from me and making me pay for supervised visits and putting all of the control in his hands. So he also got this enforcement, and the judge straight up cherry picked all these things off of his list of violations. For example, he claimed that I had not provided my contact information. Okay. Like, so she cherry picks that as a violation. Now, mind you,
Wait, your ex is claiming that you didn't provide contact information to who?
to him. That was
What?
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually, I think I need to probably put his enforcement with all the list online for everyone to see, and then show the proof in like the OFW, because I wasn't able to show this stuff in the court. Like, I have all the evidence, and because I didn't have it with me that day, the judge.
Because you weren't expecting to have to do this that day.
That's right. So this is the other thing. Like, I was on a vacation. We had 1 week of vacation coupled with our 1 week of custodial time, because we were doing week on, week off at the time. So we could take up to 2 weeks at a time when we would do a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote in the enforcement that for those entire 2 weeks, I was like withholding my daughter from him and had not brought her to the exchange location. And he literally, this is how psychotic, okay? He knew it was my week and that I was also on vacation on that other week. He still drove to the exchange location to check in to make it look like I was not there, but he was, and then filed a police report saying that I was not there with my daughter. Now, mind you, if I asked him at any point in time, hey, I'm running late, do you want to meet at this point so you can keep driving and it's only 5 more minutes for you, and like you can pick her up, you know, right here, whatever. If that was the case, he will not do it. He will not drive 5 minutes out of his way if it's something that I ask, but he will drive 15 minutes one way to the exchange location, knowing that I'm not going to be there because it's my time, to file a false police report.
Yeah, he's building a narrative.
Exactly. And he did that on 3 separate occasions. So that was the enforcement that this judge cherry picked off of, with no evidence except for all his fake check-ins. And then they create this contempt order that she suspends the commitment because he asked for jail time. He asked for me to go to jail for 6 months and to be on community supervision for 10 years after my release. Okay. This is not criminal court.
Yep. Just so people understand, your ex is acting as a prosecutor on behalf of the state by requesting sentencing for non-criminal issues in a non-criminal court, and the judge ostensibly, and at this moment now, makes a decision to act as a criminal court judge and doesn't give you this, you know, so magnanimous, she doesn't give you 10 or 6 months with 10 years of supervised release, but she still manages to throw you in jail based on a contempt order.
Well, so they suspended the commitment, right? As long as
when you say commitment, you mean commitment to the Department of Corrections
or the jail, to the county jail. Yeah. So okay. They suspend that as long as, and I don't have to go to jail as long as I follow all of the new orders. And one of those new orders included me paying $4,500 in attorney fees to him to bring forth this frivolous and fraudulent enforcement order. Okay, so they now want me to pay for them to file false charges of contempt on me for not following an order, which is complete BS. Okay, I didn't get a trial. I didn't get a jury. I didn't get an attorney defending me. No, they just decide all of this. Okay, So I went and saw my daughter at her gymnastics, violating the quote unquote injunctive order, which is unlawful and is void, right? And then I didn't pay the $4,500.
Wait, so they were telling you couldn't have contact with her outside of
They told me,
supervision, or?
yes, it was my understanding originally, which I then realized, like, so opposing counsel had made the order, and I guess I didn't catch it because I have the transcripts and I have the recording of the hearing. But my understanding was that I couldn't go 1,000 feet within his home, and I knew that, and so I wasn't, and that I couldn't go to her school. And mind you, the judge also, in the final trial when we went, she ordered that we were joint custodians, but took away all my rights. Like I can't even have medical information unless it comes from him. And of course he doesn't provide it. I can't talk to doctors. I can't talk to teachers, nothing. But she still made us joint because she knew that if she put sole custodian, that would be a surefire trigger for an appeal and it would get overturned. It's going to get overturned. I am in an appeal anyway. And here's the other thing is that anyone is welcome to read my documents. I am a complete open book about this.
Yeah, she doesn't hide anything, by the way, folks. She will tell you everything.
I will. I'll tell. And I mean, people, I had a woman that was like going around spreading all these rumors saying like, oh, I lied to everybody, that I actually violated these orders. And I mean, she ended up burying herself because everyone who really understands the realm of what we're dealing with knows that most of those things are not true, right? So anyway, so we end up going to a hearing where I was also asking for certain safety mechanisms for my daughter because she's been on a complete downward spiral since being in his care. She's sick all the time. Her emotional well-being is neurotic, I guess. And it's very clear she's being emotionally harmed, which
I
is
wonder
leading
why.
to her physical decline as well. And I was asking the judge, like, I need you to look at this evidence. Everyone else out here is saying this is child abuse. What you're doing to this child is child abuse. Judge, I need you to look at this. Instead of doing that, because this judge is so mad at me, I guess, she only hears his enforcement on the new contempt order, trying to revoke the suspension. And he brings forth this insane, vexatious litigant motion, trying to label me as a vexatious litigant. So even though I filed all of these motions about the safety of my daughter and asking to be heard, she hears only the new contempt order hearing and motion for enforcement and for me to go to jail and the vexatious litigant. And I do a great job of everything. I was asking for a stay and none of it mattered. None of it mattered. So by the end of it, she's like, you're a vexatious litigant, even though none of the things that I have filed qualify to count me as a vexatious litigant. I have been defending myself. I have not been the plaintiff or a petitioner in any of these things.
Once again, not in criminal court.
Not in criminal court.
Not in criminal court.
Yep. And so
the judge just declares you guilty of something that in a non-criminal court.
Yep.
And orders you to jail.
Just does whatever she wants. Just not even the color of law at this point. She is just doing whatever she wants. Okay.
So what it comes down to, and this is what I try to get people to understand, is that judges can find you guilty of contempt and just declare it. There is no trial. There's no trial. It's just, I'm holding you in contempt. And they can hold you indefinitely on that. Now, I think it depends on jurisdiction, like from state to state, what it looks like. But they get you locked up on non-criminal stuff based on contempt. So in other words, you just didn't treat the judge the way the judge wanted to be treated. Yeah. The judge throws you in the hoosegow for I don't know how long it was supposed to be, but you ended up filing a writ of habeas.
Parameters, in each state there are parameters, right? And so I always say, like, this is not legal advice, but I always stand on my constitutional rights. And what I do is I help people to learn the law. right? I'm not giving legal advice. I'm saying, here, I read this and I'm going to repeat what I read and I'm going to teach people, right? And that's my right. That's my liberty to do that. I'm actually running this mass writ of habeas movement now, which I think is really important for you and maybe other of your followers. If they want to join that, we need more people, because I am guiding people on what is essentially a restraint of our liberty. And that is what happened to me when I got thrown in jail. There are parameters. And the thing is, people need to start absolutely 100% standing on their constitutional rights and telling these judges, you are not above the law. There are parameters that you must follow. And if you do not follow them, then we have remedy. And if we get remedy and it is granted, now you open the door to seek damages and they lose their immunity. And every single one of us whose liberties have been restrained or our children have been taken away without due process can absolutely be a part of the habeas. And we are collecting names. We are going to take it all the way to the top and show every single bad actor, like this judge in Bell County, who is doing this to people. And I am not the only one. I'm not fighting this battle on my own. There are
you have in Bell County alone, you have
Bell County alone,
hundreds.
Under this judge, I am working with 10 other mothers. Now,
you have hundreds of cases.
It doesn't happen to fathers, okay? But for this judge in particular, she has a vendetta against mothers. I don't know what it is. I've been asking, I'm like, are there any fathers who have been treated poorly by this judge? And I have yet to find one, but I want them to come forth. But the restraint on liberty, so she threw me in jail saying that I violated this new order for not paying and for violating the injunction, okay? The underlying order was void for being too ambiguous, because there was no proof that I actually violated any part of that order. And so that underlying order was void, and that underlying order is what created the contempt order, which led to the second one. So if the underlying order is void, there can't be another order to violate, okay?
Right. That's like being arrested for resisting an arrest when you haven't been placed under arrest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wait a minute, I can't resist.
They're like talking to you and they're like, oh, you don't want to talk to us? Okay, we're arresting you for resisting, It's like,
so you wrote your own writ of habeas corpus.
No, actually, my attorney that is doing my appeal, she actually wrote the habeas. We were fully prepared to write the habeas ourselves. And I was talking with lots of people while I was in jail. A lot of people were helping, but I ended up getting my appellate attorney to write the habeas, which she only focused on, they have this creed, right? No one will fight harder for you than yourself. You will fight the hardest for yourself if you know what to do, or somebody who's been through it, right? So I definitely would have written it differently. I would have attacked every aspect of it to just make sure that I just like sliced through that thing. It was like void, 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 right? There's no questions about it. But she kind of stuck within the creed of like a lawyer and that whole little club that they have, which is fine. And ultimately, she
got the job done in this situation.
She got the job done. Yeah. And it was wonderful. And I mean, she's absolutely wonderful. As far as that's hard for me to say, because
I was just going to say, after what you've been through, it's not easy to say positive things about it.
I mean, it costs a lot of money, right? And that's the end of it. And that's why I've now written 3 of my own appeals, including an interlocutory appeal on the vexatious litigant. And I feel like I could write appeals for people all day long now. I mean, I just ought to make this a job. I didn't go to law school, but I sure as heck know how to do it and know the formatting,
But you have proof that the dogged determination will win out, because not only are you not in jail today, which you very well could still be in jail without the habeas, but you've convinced your appellate attorney, or your appellate attorney to take up your cause as well, which normally they will not touch inferior situations. They will rarely ever involve themselves in the originality. They will only involve themselves in the actual appeals process. So your attorney knows that you're onto something here. So you've got this proven track record of like, okay, you might think I'm a crackpot, but I'm onto something.
Yeah.
So,
well, here's the thing is she got paid. Okay. She got paid. She didn't do it for free. That's one thing. Number two is that when you stand on your constitutional rights and the actual law, and you can show that the due process was violated. I mean, if you're going to be prosecuted in a quasi-criminal case, which is what a contempt order in family court is, it's quasi-criminal. So there are parameters. She did not admonish me to my right to an attorney, even though I know all of these things and I actually stated it. She did not admonish me. She didn't say, do you know that we're moving forward in this quasi-criminal realm and that you have the right to be appointed an attorney? And I would have said, oh, I do? Okay, yes, please appoint me an attorney. Okay? Because the reason that she didn't is because it would have stopped everything. I wouldn't have gone to jail that day. And it would have taken away.
She wanted you in jail.
She wanted me in jail. 100%. They wanted me in jail. She put me in there for 6 months, day for day, for going to see my daughter and for not paying $4,500 in attorney fees. So for everybody out there who is watching this, and as far as like the habeas, right, you must understand your rights. You cannot argue against your rights being violated if you do not understand your rights.
Yep.
So everybody needs to understand what their rights are, and be ready to attack them from all angles.
So what's, well, we're way over the 40, and that's your fault, lady.
It's okay.
I'm not taking the blame.
I got time. No worries.
I know that you probably have a charter or something to do today. So
that's what I do. But I left myself some time. I was going to do some other things prior, but I'm enjoying it. So maybe
I would
10 minutes left.
Yeah. I was just going to say, let's give it just a few more, and then we can, revisit. We can message later and revisit the idea of having you back on to talk more in detail about what it looks like going forward. What's the next step for you, Kai, in this? Because you've won because they had to produce your body, and that's what this writ is. It's like over and over and over again throughout history. And one of the best places for people who don't know, if you haven't, is the 10th Amendment Center has a podcast, Path to Liberty, and they talk about things like the writ of habeas corpus quite a bit. Brian McClanahan, his program, he talks about what writ of habeas corpus is quite a bit on his show. And these guys point out that the system at all levels, from Lincoln, the esteemed President Lincoln, on down, have violated these writs, this habeas corpus, over and over and over again, unlawfully. Like, the president can't just suspend habeas corpus. They have to go through Congress. A judge can't just suspend habeas corpus. They don't have that authority. That's a congressional act. And so when you present
this, like a war going on, but then they have to
they still have to get permission. Right. Yeah. And for a judge to basically look at you and say, screw you, I'm suspending, habeas corpus for you because I can, that's a massive problem. And people do not understand just how big of a deal that is. And here you are.
You know what, though? It's even bigger than that. It's not even about the habeas. It's that a judge can look at another person and say that I am going to violate your God-given inalienable, unalienable rights. Okay? Without
on a whim.
Any reason.
Yep.
Okay, I am completely for protecting children. If there is somebody who is, on substances and needs help, and we need to keep those children safe, it is not about government involvement and infringing and then all of a sudden saying, I'm going to terminate your rights. It's about community and getting people involved who can hopefully help that person, because, get them off of the substances, get them family involved. If there is family support, grandparents or aunts and uncles who are capable and who want to do that. But you know what's happening is that the government just sees dollar signs, and they're literally taking children away from parents who could have support, who could have community, and could be helped to be better parents for their children and safe for their children. And they're putting them in foster homes. And you know why they're doing that? Because the taxpayers are paying into it, and CPS and foster care is getting $2,700 a month. They're giving $600 to the foster family, and they get to keep the rest to run their system.
And the foster families pay for their licensing.
Exactly.
And they have to continue to pay. So, and
yeah,
and the more kids that they are allowed to foster, the more money that they can make from the system.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And that is not an attack on people who do foster care. There are some very fine foster care people out there.
Absolutely. They want to do the right thing. And that's the system that's been put in place, and they don't really know what else to do at this point, but I think those people need to also support reunification with other family members. If other family members are safe, they should be in conversation. So ultimately, that is what Children's Court and our mission really aims to do. We really are centered around the children, around what is best for the children. As our motto says, when the children win, nobody loses, because we're not going to have people go into family court anymore with an attorney saying, both of you are going to have to sacrifice something. Neither of you are going to be completely happy. It's like, okay, if we're both focused on what the child needs and what is best for the child, no one can lose, and also
everyone should be able to walk away happy with that.
We're not even, and there should be no lawyers in family court. This should be more like Judge Judy, any kind of civil aspect. You need to see that person for who they are. These narcissists love to hide behind lawyers, a bigger narcissist, because they don't have to show who they really are. And the moment that a person like that, with that personality, whether covert or overt, when they start talking and saying things, you're going to see the discrepancies in their stories, and you're going to go, okay, that, the intuition in all of us will kick in, and you're gonna be like, that just doesn't sound right. I mean, for classic case of mine is like, look, dude, this chick that clearly has issues of what you've done to her still moved to Texas so that you could have your daughter. And look at what you've done to her. I mean, if on the outside, if it wasn't my story, I'm not asking for sympathy or pity or anything, but that's the reality. It's like, how many people would pick up and move so that a father could have his daughter as often as possible, and then you drag her through 3 years of court and take her daughter from her? I mean,
exactly.
in Children's Court, the professionals that would be assessing that, they would know right away. And they would know that that is absolutely not what's in the child's best interest,
What do you, for a closing thought for somebody out there who's, in this is not me playing devil's advocate, but you're going to hear me say this a lot in other, places, especially if we have you back on, which I think would be a great conversation to continue. If we taking away the stuff that makes people uncomfortable, and that you take away those references to the private or sovereign or whatever, you take away all of that. And I'm not saying you should, but let's just because people don't they have an image in their mind that the media and the regimists have all painted that anybody who talks like this must be a meth head, or whatever the case might be. So they've built that intentionally, that anybody that talks about these things has got to be, a crackpot.
Yep.
To take away all that crackpot stuff aside, there, like you said, there are still people who don't talk that way, who are still losing their cases, still losing their families, still losing their children. They don't have the money to fight. They're never going to see their kids again, either because they're ripped out of their hands and put into foster care, or they're put into the hands of an abusive ex, or whatever the case might be. What word of encouragement can you offer to those people who don't use the same language as you, but are experiencing the same abuse, tyrannical, oppressive abuse from a system that is geared towards whoever wants to pay the most?
Man, it's kind of interesting. I guess if you're already in it, I would really encourage everybody to look at the bigger monster that we're fighting here. On one side, really to stay focused on the children, and what is best for your child. And for you personally, if that means safety from an abusive parent, then absolutely that's the path. But at the end of the day, we are all fighting this big monster, and we've got to cut the monster's head off, and stab it in the heart at the same time, so that multiple heads don't keep growing back. And I think that if everybody just kind of worked together to understand that, to have that where we're all working towards this common goal of protecting the children, but also stopping the abuse from the institution, we can come together to really put that energy and that even that trauma into the same place. If you're not in it, I would say the words of encouragement would be like, try to be the best person and parent that you can be, and work with the other person as much as you can, or do all kinds of nonviolent communication and mediation, and get the support that you can to never have to step foot in family court. That's just ultimately trying to keep people out of that realm, because it's just not ever going to go the way that you want. And you also need to recognize that even your narcissistic counterpart who is fighting you is losing too, because my ex has spent at least $300,000, I would assume. I've spent $400,000. So it's like, no one's doing this for free.
It's just mind-boggling to think that you're approaching nearly $1 million
in the case.
Between the two parties.
Yeah,
and one party is using it as a weapon against the other.
Yeah. But they're losing. It is a double-edged sword, right? Because it's just, you can talk to that person and say, hey, look, if this goes the way that this Kai's story goes, like, we're going to be out $1 million. You could go buy yourself another house with that. Doesn't that sound good? Like, dear narcissist, go buy yourself another house. Go make more money. Why would you just use the money to fight in court when you're going to lose too? Mm-hmm. And you're hurting your child, Well, because we always hope that language works, but
it doesn't with the narcs. So
some of them have so much money that it doesn't matter. That's the other problem. So,
well, Kai, I can't thank you enough for your time. I think we're probably going to have to, revisit your story as things progress, and just check in with you from time to time to find out how things are going. Tell the audience where they can, what platforms they can find you on, and then we will also have Kai's going to write a brief description. I promise, a brief description.
Are you telling or asking?
Yes. Kai will be writing a brief description of what she's got going on, and in that description, we will be including links to the platforms where you can find her. But tell everybody where they can find you. And
so personally, Facebook and Instagram, Phoenix_Kai_Rising. That's my personal stuff. You can follow me there. If you want to follow the Children's Court movement and the Children First Act bill that we're trying to get passed, it's children's_court on Instagram, Children's Court on Facebook, and you can find a lot more about the organization at childrenscourt.org.
And if anybody, because you're in Texas, mm-hmm. Are you on the Gulf Coast or are you on the Pacific?
I'm in Austin, so I'm central, like right almost smack dab in the middle.
All right. But you do chartering.
Yeah, I do chartering of boats and surf lessons. Yeah, so wake surf. So we make a wave behind the boat and we surf on it. I used to surf longboards in Hawaii, so a little different. But yeah, if you're here and you want to come hang out on the boat for the day and get some surf lessons, I do that too. So I'd love to have you guys. Love to have you out.
You don't want to see me in a bathing suit.
As long as it's not a Speedo, I think we'll be okay.
Trust me, no one, not even I, would do that to myself.
So. Oh my goodness. Well, I won't judge you, I won't judge you. This isn't family court.
Yeah, right. That would be contemptuous on my part to do that.
That would be, right.
That would be very contemptuous.
I don't know. You're afforded a jury and a attorney, so we'll let them be the judge.
There's not an attorney in the world that would take that case. We'll be in touch. Make sure that you write up that brief, little description and get those to me, and we'll get them in the description of the video. And I will let you watch from the green room while I say goodbye, and then I'll come back and after I close this out, and we'll just make sure that you get everything on your end.
Do you want
Thank
me
you,
to
Kai.
type it in the chat here?
No, you could just type it up and
Oh,
put it in Messenger.
send it to you. Got it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Just a second. Let me close this out.
All right.
Oh, folks, so much going on there, and this is why it was very important to me to have her on, because I wanted people to hear, like, every time you turn around, if you're paying attention, I've got a case with the gentleman here in Minnesota that's getting run through the ringer by the family courts. And we're working on getting him on, because he's had it. He's done. He's done playing nice. He's done, he's done backing down. He's tried to remain low key and kind of keep everything, quiet, because he's trying to be respectful, but the courts just keep beating him. And that's the only way to describe it. And so when I came across, Kai's story, I'm like, here's a great introductory story for people to really understand. And if you don't hear the similarities between how she's being treated versus how, or in comparison to how Pam was treated here, it's not family court, but it's that social services aspect. And Kai had brought that up. She said they they will get you no matter what. They'll find a way. If you don't want to go through the family court system, the child protective services will come in and take your kids from you. They don't care. They just want the power and the freedom to be able to abuse you and get what they want. And children are a money-making scheme for the state. It is. It's just flat out the truth. The worst child traffickers in the United States do not come from across the southern border. The worst child traffickers are paid by wage slave taxpayer dollars. I said it, and I don't care if you don't like it. And the worst part of it is that they bring the cops with them to enforce it. So the system's got to change, and if we can't get the system changed, then these abuses are going to keep happening. So shout out to all the channel members. If you're not a channel member yet, please find a level of support, pick it, and uh, be there for the channel. Honestly, folks, if you know my story and you know what I've fought and what I've lost since I started this show 5 years ago, since I started the channel, the platform 5 years ago, every little bit helps, even views, anything that can drive us up in the algorithm. Please share this out. Tag, Kai. Just do annoy her at this point. But I said I knew she couldn't respond, so I said it while she was watching off cam. Help me keep the show going, keep the electricity on, keep the internet going, keep the information flowing. We're going to be having more with Pam. Hopefully we'll be having more with Marcy about justice for Spencer and how the system's abused her. We're looking at getting witnesses on there. Pam has a couple of parents who are willing to come on and testify. I'm also working on the story out of Sherburne County about the state patrol officer who has paralyzed uh, a young man driver who stopped a Good Samaritan way to help an old man who was driving the wrong way on the highway, and the responding state trooper has almost killed this young man. And the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office, who's investigating it, has spent a month investigating almost. It'll be a month here in a few days, and hasn't said a word to the family. No information to the family. If that were anybody else, folks, if that was just a regular Joe off the street and not a state trooper or another law enforcement person, the investigating agency would have been talking to the family on a regular basis. That the instigator of the accident would have at least already been booked in on pending charges for criminal vehicular damage, for lack of better terminology, with severe bodily harm. Nope. Trooper sitting at home getting paid to be on vacation after he caused an accident. And they've tried to blame the victims. People are already blaming the victims. Don't get out of the car. Why was he on the wrong side of the road? Why were they in the way of the trooper? And so, folks, this is why I do what I do. It's to tell stories like what Kai has going on. Now, obviously, people would rather watch Kai than me. I mean, I'm not going to argue. You're crazy if you don't want to watch Kai over me. But I'm trying to help everybody's stories get out there and show how all of this stuff links together. Shout out to show producers too, by the way. I'm Matt from Subscribestar, Angry Vet from here on YouTube, and I'm still looking for a show producer on Rumble. So if you want to hit the channel memberships over on Rumble, we'll take that there as well. Channel members in general, thank you very much. All of my subscribers, hate watchers, those of you who like to come in and comment, just so you know, when you say mean things about me, it still puts it in the algorithm and helps the view count. So, and if you can't watch the whole thing at one shot, you can still leave it playing in the background, because we're looking for watch hours now. The channel recently just had over 1 million views, which was huge for me. For some, that's 1 million views in one video. I'm happy to have 1 million views, period. So the channel has over 1 million views, and that's lots of hours of watch time. So help with that. Be looking for more information coming out from Kai. Make sure you follow her and all of her socials. And if you ever get down to Austin, I've seen some of the videos of the surfboarding. I don't know what I live in Minnesota and I go nowhere near the water. So go check out her stuff on Instagram and Facebook. She's got some very interesting videos of people wake surfing. I think I got it. So until next time, my friends, as my friend Monica made this handmade acrylic sign, fight for your liberty, it is yours. Fight for your freedom, it belongs to you. And sic semper tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Secondary guidance systems engaged. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark. All systems are a go. All systems are a go. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.